Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hi, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 122 of Cognitive, and I probably sound real familiar because I just recorded the previous episode about 48 hours ago. I'm still pushing through the endless upper respiratory thing that I have. But life comes along fast here on Rancho Cognitive, and things have happened even in this time. So I'll update you, hopefully, if nothing else, to get the podcast sort of back on the track for weekly summaries. So here we are at episode 122. Of course, your comments are welcome. You can put them on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, or you can put them on our group on Ravelry. I do the grand sweep of these things about once a week and try to catch all the changes. Let's see. In the warm thanks. Well, first of all, Chris, we're all waiting, Chris. We want to know about that baby. We're all waiting. I'm just saying, I know. Last of the month, I think. We're all waiting. This is also Cutiful Christina, as we also know her. And we are all crossing our fingers and saying a little prayer or doing the thing we do to wish you the best as you progress through that experience. Amy Storm checked in and talked about how she used to use sign language in primary school to communicate with her friend instead of writing notes, and it's a lot easier and safer. You don't get caught as much, particularly if the teacher has no idea what you're doing. That never hurts. But she also talks about using sign with her preverbal children to encourage early communication. When you have normal kids, none of us do, we all have wonderful kids. We all have exceptional kids. You know it, I know it. It's genetically linked to the fact you listen to this podcast. But we'll just throw this in for any people passing by who may have normal kids. It's really wonderful, and all the research says this, to teach your kids 2 languages. When children are acquiring language, they do not seem to be preferential in how they acquire language. So it's been clearly shown kids will start to sign earlier than they will speak intelligible words, that the process is a little more natural to them. So there's a thought. You can get your kids signing a lot younger than you can get them speaking. There is research that suggests that if you start them signing, they will be better and more fluent as speakers, and they will pick up reading and social cueing more quickly. I don't know if I've seen enough of that research to be convinced, but it's certainly worth following up on. So yeah, please sign with your babies. Also, signing is just universally easy, as Amy is pointing out. There are a lot of ways to sign that are just useful, whether you're hearing or not. A few of my favorites, the letter T, which is, if you're Italian, you would call it the fig. You take your thumb and you stick it between the index and middle fingers of your right hand or your dominant hand, and you shake it in the air. And that is saying, I need to pee. Can someone tell me where the toilet is? I find that one incredibly useful. The other one people like is the clapping gesture. If you're deaf or hard of hearing, you hold up your hand straight up, fingers pointed towards the ceiling, and then you rotate the wrist, the royal wave. And depending on how fast you do it, it's about your excitement. Okay, you can do it with both hands. If you're really excited, you can do it with one hand. But it's a nice way to clap when you think someone isn't going to notice you any other way. It's a kind of good way to show agreement. I also do the yes and no and okay signs in meetings. Okay, which are the letters okay, very quickly. If you don't know sign, that's going to be a little more hard to pick up on. But yes is you just make a fist with your thumb tucked in, and you put the knuckles at eye level, and you wag it up and down at the wrist. You just raise and lower your clenched fist in that gesture. That's yes. No is you take two fingers and you stretch them up, your first two fingers, index and middle, and then you tap them on your thumb. What you're actually doing are the letters N-O very quickly. Just trust me on that one, that N is your thumb under your first two fingers. O is probably what you think it is, your index and thumb making an O. Well, if you do that quickly, it looks pretty much like the no sign. So no is just an abbreviation of N-O in ASL. So those are some really nice, simple signs. I use them at meetings all the time to express agreement, particularly on Zoom. So thank you, Amy. Chris, we haven't forgotten you. Baby, just saying, let's, make it easy, nice and simple. Maybe after you've woken up in the morning and, you've cleaned yourself up and you feel ready for the day, maybe not before you eat, and would be a good time to have, 20-minute labor and have the kid, and then, come back and let us know how it went, okay? We're just all wishing a really easy one on you. COVID, oh God. I feel like I don't know what I have. I don't have COVID. At this point, I'm really tired of it because my right eye swelled and both eyes are getting glued shut when I wake up in the morning. It's gruesome. This is really gruesome. This is me telling you, remember, there's a lot of things out there that you can catch. And if you're in Southern California, I don't know, this place is like a swamp of disease this winter. Everybody's got something. So, think about it. It seems like the CDC is saying COVID boosters every 6 months. I just saw a notice from them. I believe it is about the sense that they're putting new variants into the upgrades. So, yeah. So anyway, get your shots. Flu shot, COVID shot, shingles shot, pneumonia shot, whatever you need. But just get your shots, socially distance, wash your hands a lot. Try to stay safe, kids. I am broadcasting to you here from the first day of spring, 2023. So that leads me to tell you that would be great, except we have a 40-hour winter storm warning rolling in tonight. So the beloved is off getting propane for the generator because everything will be fine. And I may get some time off work because I don't know if the internet will work, except if the heat goes out, if the power goes out, that'll be a little slice of purgatory. So those of you who need a generator alert for Southern California, you're hearing it here first. Get your generators ready, kids. But in the meantime, it is springtime, which leads me to some hope. The snow is slowly melting on the mountains opposite me, which I would say they're probably about 5,000 feet. Would be my guess, and I'm looking at it 5,000 feet, 4,000 to 5,000 feet. But anyway, we don't have any snow here. Apparently that's about to change. However, on my hooks and needles, I'm just whining. Isn't this awful? On my hooks and needles, nothing finished because after all, it's only been about 48 hours. But things are going along pretty well considering that I have not been pretty well myself. The stash toss is still frozen at 4 skeins in versus 21 skeins out. The vestuary, I just don't have the bandwidth. It's driving me crazy. I want to sit down and work on it. And every time I try to, I just can't summon focus. That also means nothing on the lane splitter, but the don't know yet. Well, I'll tell you, when you're out of bandwidth, yeah, mattress stitch. That one booked right along. Right now, I have rows 1 to 12 are now completely sewn together with the ends woven in. So I finished the 12th row actually yesterday. And I got bored. I can't think what I was doing. But I picked up the next row, 13, which was partly sewn together. And I booked all the way through row 13, and then because I was restless, I went into the bedroom and I found row 14, which was already clipped together. And row 14 is now completely done in terms of its short edges. So the job now is to sew row 13 completely onto the body of the blanket and to weave in all its ends and then do the same with row 14 before I get on to row 15. Meanwhile, no love for the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery or the Lady Eleanor shawl. I'm feeling the craving to finish something big because I haven't finished anything big since I finished the Wrapped in Tiny Chains cardigan, which I'm looking at as it hangs over the back of my office chair. And I have to tell you, if you want a really easy, satisfying project, that is the one. I'm also looking at making it again myself, just simply shortening some of the lengths on it, which would go lickety-split. I made it very long. I mean, it's about down to my knees. It's like a coat. And it's great. But shortening it to something a little lighter weight for the spring and summer is very, very tempting because, I still have a lot of that yarn left over. At any rate, my favorite resources are listed in the show notes, as always. And Dizzy Blondes, I did spin 2 wads of Minerva fur today, and so everybody is happy, including both Minerva and myself. So let's get on to a strategy. And we are doing mindfulness, and we're looking at it through a slightly different lens, which is Japanese philosophies of looking at the world. And today's is wabi-sabi. And wabi-sabi is very interesting. It's all over the place now. It's up there with hygge, which means something totally different from a completely different region of the world. But wabi-sabi is just one of those popular ideas. And usually you see it manifested, like you'll see a broken vase and it will be seamed in the cracks with like gold or silver or something like that. And that's how it shows up in American popular culture, is breaking things by doing beautiful repairs. And that is a wonderful thing to me because I am a person who would say better to mend than spend. And I do agree that there are places I don't do it. Like I've got so much sock yarn that I have to admit when my socks wear out, I'm not repairing them anymore, I'm tossing them. However, I'm happy to say they get pretty worn out before we reach that moment. But there's a lot more to wabi-sabi than that. Wabi-sabi is about the idea that there is nothing perfect in the world, and you have to try to celebrate that instead of hiding it or pretending it's not true. So wabi-sabi starts from a Buddhist concept that nothing lasts, nothing is ever finished, and nothing is going to be perfect. And you have to make your peace with that because that allows for loss and change in the world. It posits the world as a place where everything is in flux, everything is in change. And so trying to hold something still and say, this is it, this is perfect, it's kind of a futile action. Now out of that you get the images we get in popular culture. We get the idea that when something breaks, you repair it in a way so that the repairs stand out. And now you do not have a restored original. What you have is this other creature that is a sort of beta version or second generation version of the original. And that version itself is just fine. There's nothing wrong with it just because it's been repaired. The way it's looked at is it was the destiny of that object to be broken and to be repaired. And if you say it should look like it originally looked, you're being unrealistic. You're resisting the normal forces of nature and the world. You're trying to recreate what has been lost and does not necessarily deserve the energy of being recreated exactly as it was. This is a tough one for Westerners. We're always mending and repairing to try to return to what we feel we've lost, or just throwing it out and buying a totally new one, or making a totally new one that will look exactly the same. You really can't do that. That change is inevitable. And resisting change is only going to lead to a lot of sorrow. I love this because this is so much about the act strengths. First of all, this is acceptance. This is recognizing that you have moved on, you are in a new place, or the object has moved on, and your relationship with the broken and possibly mended object has developed, that it is not the same. That is acceptance. That instead of avoiding what we don't like, avoiding new experience, and being rigid, we simply flow. And that's a very Western way of saying wabi-sabi, that wabi-sabi is about the object and our acceptance of the object. When you talk about the act strength of acceptance, it's much more self-centered. I am changing. I'm not really looking at the object that forces me to recognize my change. Nonetheless, the other act value is being in the present. That when you see that the object is changed and that the old object that you treasured has moved into a new form or is broken completely, that is the ability to live in the present, to say, it was great that I had that thing. I don't have that thing anymore. I may miss it, but I live in a world without that thing. And it can be more than things. On the sad end of the stick, it can be people we've lost, people who have moved out of our lives. But the idea here is you live in the present, and living in the present means you are accepting change and imperfection. You are accepting that nothing lasts, even relationships, that the world itself is not finished, and that you are developing and you are moving forward. In a fainter way, this is about the self as context. That when you're living in the present with acceptance, you realize that you yourself are living in different contexts of who you are. So the things you do today may be somewhat different than the things you chose to do a while ago because your context has changed. In other words, you yourself are not going to last. You yourself are always unfinished. You yourself are never perfect. And so you will experience change. And so you have to admire the imperfection there. You have to admire that you are a growing person and you can't keep looking at yourself as somehow hardened off and finished. So wabi-sabi, nothing lasts, nothing is finished, nothing is perfect. So the best we can do is try to live with imperfections and admire the beauty in them. Wow, not much going in the fluffy books because I don't have the bandwidth to read. I'm really just pushing through class and trying to stay on my feet. I did go to class last Wednesday night. It was a really great class, and I came home and got sick as a dog again Thursday. So I'm wearing that off. Oh, shoot, same thing, nothing exciting there, but something I really like. You may remember in the last episode I introduced you to my necklace, chatelaine. Well, it has a sequel. Once I found that on Etsy, I searched the word chatelaine, not much came up. Well, heaven bless the algorithms that drive Etsy, because after a few days I started seeing these beautiful pewter chatelaine main pieces from a guy called Sheldon Pewter. Sheldon Pewter does pewter main pieces of chatelaines with chains hanging from them. Now, Sheldon Pewter does belt pieces. As far as I can tell, they are not doing necklaces. I had really been against a belt piece, but then I started watching The Law According to Lydia Poet on Netflix. And there's a few chatelaines. You have to really pay attention. They're belt chatelaines. They're incorporated into women's day dresses. And I started really looking out for those babies because I saw a hint on Instagram that they were there. And I realized, yeah, this can work really well. So anyway, I looked at the belt chatelaines. There were a lot of good ones. There's a really tasty dragon, except that it looks like it would get caught in any sweater that you wore over it or around it. So I began looking for just the oval-shaped belt chatelaines because they don't look like they'll catch on your clothes. And he's got ones that pin on and ones that clip on. And I was worried about the clip, but I don't want to keep putting pinholes in my skirt. So I ended up buying the clip. Good choice. So I bought one with two doves facing at each other in a very symmetrical pattern, very Pennsylvania German looking. It has 4 chains extending down from it for your various tools. It came very quickly, and it's really beautiful. And you can see a picture in the show notes. There's 2 of them, actually. One is me wearing one of my sweaters, my Francis Revisited, and my typical day skirt. And you can just see peeping out from under it 2 of the tools, a disc thread cutter and a little needle holder. Those attach really handily to the chains, which have clips at the end to do it. And it just works perfectly. I really, really like this. I believe it was $50. Most of them, no, it could be somewhere between 50 and I think 85. I can't remember. I can't remember if it was 50 or 65. At any rate, that's the price range. If you're me, highly worth it. I really haven't taken the thing off since it arrived. It's so great to have my tools conveniently hanging from my waistband. It does not drag down the waistband. It's very well balanced on both sides of the clip. I'm deeply impressed with this. So there's a picture of a close-up of the oval that is the part that is lying on the waistband of my skirt. And you can see the chains hanging down from it. And there's a picture of it turned over so you can see the belt clip on the back. Clip does not move. It's completely rigid. Your skirt fits between that long clip and the oval that is the frontispiece. And then the bottom picture is 2 pictures. There's one of me, a close-up of the tools peeping out from under my Francis Revisited sweater. You can see one of the chains hanging loose there too. I hadn't put anything on it yet. And then there's a picture of how it looks on the waistband. You can see the oval top of the chatelaine and the 4 chains and 2 tools on it. There's an extra chain there because my tools came from Ravelry Studios, which is where I got my necklace chatelaine. She is using less expensive materials. And she puts a lot of chains in. She's really worried about people not succeeding with their chains. To the point where I did go to Michael's and I bought what's called I think it's called a side clipper. And I've clipped off some excess chain that I don't need. And I'm really happy with this. I think both the necklace and the waistband have their uses. But I'm deeply, deeply happy with my waistband chatelaine from Sheldon Pewter on Etsy. Put a lid on it. Tea tastings. I just ordered a whole lot of Plum Deluxe. All tasters. I basically bought out their citrus range in herbal, I think, because I'm looking for anything that'll help me with a cold. Anything I can drink that will feel better. A sort of throat coat. They have one that has licorice in it, which is, I think for me, like something like lemongrass and licorice is the foundation. I'm trying to think what else. Slippery elm is good in that as well. Willow bark. But anyway, so they don't have as many herbal cold blends as I like them to have, but I bought a whole bunch of samplers. We'll see how that works. If nothing else, they'll be great in the summer as iced teas. Over on the Keto Chow list on Facebook, somebody posted a recipe for waffles made out of keto chow. So I posted the recipe. These things are incredibly easy. I did them by hand. I mixed them by hand, but frankly, I think a bullet blender is really the best solution for this. And it's 2 eggs, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 tablespoons, actually 1 teaspoon of baking powder. I think it's 2 tablespoons of substitute brown sugar. I use brown sugar swerve. A full packet or scoop of keto chow. I used the gingerbread flavor. And I'm trying to think, a dash of water. And I think that was about it. Anyway, the recipe is there. Incredibly easy. They come out looking exactly like the picture. They were good. I'm not sure how much of a sense of taste I had, but it's a generous amount. That, in other words, it filled my waffle iron twice. I have a little waffle iron. I don't have a mini, an absolute teeny one. But I have your sort of basic, little waffle iron, not a family-sized one. I'm not making sense. My waffles looked about that size. and one batch made 2 of those waffles. I melted butter on them and put a little bit of keto chocolate chip on them. And in the gingerbread flavor, it worked very nicely. In the blather, ASL goes on. We don't have a meeting this week. We have a kind of incoherent essay assignment that I'm not quite looking forward to tackling, but hopefully I won't be sick forever and I'll have plenty of time to do it. Pup date. The younger girls are doing well. Blankets is not. Blankets just suddenly came down with a bloody nose, and as of right now, we have a vet appointment for her tomorrow at 11. She's walking around, she's eating, she's interacting. She just is uncomfortable. And I'm thinking she has an abscess on a tooth, but she's got a bloody nose with that we don't quite understand. And the side of her face is starting to swell. So she's going in tomorrow to get that handled. Frankly, I would like to take her in right now. We couldn't get anybody who would take her. And the only one we got said, well, you'll probably have to wait. It'll be hours. And I'm not well enough to do that, frankly. And my husband is shuttling back and forth, picking up our child. So, blanket seems okay. But the other thing, as my husband keeps saying, is, sweetheart, she's 15 years old. That, of course, one of the problems with very, very old animals is their teeth start to go. And the teeth are a reflection of kidney failure and just attributable to old age. That's one of the ways a dog dies of old age. The back hips go, or you start having mouth problems. We've already lost a 20-year-old cat to this. And I think we're all kind of making our peace around that. Blankets seems comfortable, and she lapped some chicken broth today, but she's just kind of lying around the house. Every now and then she walks in, touches her nose to me to make sure I'm here, and then she walks out. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this, and we're kind of bracing ourselves just in case. There is a picture of blankets lying on my latest blanket that she likes, the Don't Know Yet blanket, and as we used to say when I was quilting more frequently, she blessed it by lying on it all one evening, and that's a good sign. So we'll have to see how that works out. Otherwise, Hub's date, he's doing fine. He's out prepping the generator and picking up Junior and doing running with Junior. They both have the same cold I have. They were miserably sick, and then yesterday they both just turned the bend. Wish I could say that. I thought I had done it this morning, but I'm still kind of yucky right now. On the calendar, really the evolution of psychotherapy in Anaheim, December 12th through 17th. We don't have a chance to go into the Grand Canyon. We're just kind of broke. It's not bad broke. We have enough to get by. We're comfortable. It's not a desperation thing. But basically, we can't afford any kind of major trip this year. So, this is why we collect hotel points. Hopefully we'll go to a local branch of the hotel where we have points, where it's cheap. And we'll just sit by a pool a couple days in the summer while I work in the room. But, it isn't going to be an exotic year for vacations. I have to tell you, when I say that, I have to do the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference. I have to do my required continuing ed, and that's just a bargain anyway. We're supposed to do 36 units. They've changed how we get them, but the really nice thing is, the last time I did an evolution of psychotherapy, I did, for this cycle of my license, I think I've got 123 units. I do a lot of hours. This is what I really love, is the training, and evolution is wonderful because it lasts for 5 days. So I can go down for as many times as I want, day trips, because now I can take the train. It does work. But also they're putting it online. So for the next 6 months after that, through June of 2024, I can just pick up classes online for free that I already have paid for. I love these people, which is good. They and I seem likely to retire about the same time because they're aging out, and maybe I am too. It's really disturbing. Some of my friends are writing about their experiences now as having just retired, people my age. I'm finding it weird. Me, I will probably keep working at least part-time till the mortgage on the house is paid off, frankly. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't have to worry about that. Right now, the job is to get junior through high school. But in the meantime, that's going to be a huge vacation for me. And, the boys have to have their time out too. So we'll probably end up in a hotel for, a few days in the summer, because then we could just go out to eat and just take a little time out from the house, drive back, feed everybody, and then come back to the hotel and just get away a little bit. So I think that's going to be our big, exciting vacation plans for 2023. And I'm kind of okay with that right now. But the Grand Canyon, too much right now. This is not the year for that. And I don't feel really bad about that. I'm kind of enjoying this year of being in my home and just kind of enjoying things the way they are and knitting and crocheting through my stash. Okay, so Minerva gets the last word. There's a picture there. Minerva's in my lap, and I had the camera, the phone, on a stand at probably a little below my knee level, as you can see in the picture. And I grabbed the remote and started hitting the shutter on it and got all these candids of Minerva. So this is another one where I'm scratching under her chin, and she is just really enjoying it. And that picture makes me realize how much fun it is to just be with someone else and make them happy and watch them bliss out. So Minerva, if she could talk, would tell you, go out there and make somebody happy this week. And, maybe if you do that, karmically, someone will come and scratch under your chin too. So with all that in mind, I think we're at the end of our thread. No, what are they at the end of? I can't remember. We're at the end of something. That's really funny. I can just hear Jasmine's voice saying, we're at the end of our, and I can't hear the end of it. But nonetheless, I'm at the end of my whatever. So I'm just going to say, everybody remember, we are a community. When we take care of each other, that is one of the most effective ways to, in turn, take care of ourselves. So, do the good things. Wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distance, get your shots. Most of all, remember to watch out for everybody. And in that way, you know that you can stay safe and take care of each other. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.